Hi, this is John Forsland, TV voice of the Carolina Hurricanes. You're watching the Power Play Break, the place to talk about pucks.
Back here with Rick Peckham of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Rick, let's talk about now. 1995, you decided to move down to Tampa. What was the reason behind leaving the Whalers? I mean, just a better opportunity came along for you, or?
Well, it was very apparent that the Whalers were looking to get out of their lease in Hartford and move. And there were stories of they were going to move to Columbus, they were going to move to Las Vegas, they were going to get the sweetheart deal in Raleigh, and it was just like I had a young family. At the time, in '95, I would have had a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. The boys are now 21 and 19, so it was a long time ago. But you really had to think about, are you in control of where you're going here? And so I thought, you know what, I better start checking around. And as it worked out, John Kelly moved on to Colorado. He had been the original Lightning television voice and went to the Avs at that point. And so Jerry Helper was one of the guys who started the Lightning franchise from a PR standpoint. And now he, of course, has been with Nashville since they started. But Jerry, I knew him from the Buffalo days when they were affiliated for the first time with Rochester. I was obviously the broadcaster PR guy, and so I'd converse and deal with Jerry on a regular basis. And so Jerry called me and let me know about the opportunity there. And I thought, well, this is a great opportunity. I'd never, growing up, pictured myself living in Florida.
Calling hockey on TV.
Yeah, and now we're in Florida. I can't picture myself living anywhere else. So it's just worked out beautifully. We love the Tampa area. My family has loved it. Hockey has been interesting. It's been exhilarating. It's been kind of disappointing at times with the various ownership situations and changes that we've undergone. But it's been exciting, never a dull moment. And from my particular professional standpoint, it's worked out very, very well. Couldn't ask for more.
Now, you know, Phil Esposito was the architect to bring that team there. I mean, would Phil tell you, like, hey, the broadcast today, Rick, I don't want you talking a lot about the other team, or he just kind of leave you alone and let you do your own gig?
Pretty much leave you alone. I mean, at the time when he was general manager, you might hear something if he thought you could be a little bit more positive at times, but nothing serious, and it really didn't meddle as far as that was concerned. And of course, as everyone knows, Phil was a broadcaster with
yes,
Rangers for
that's why I was asking that question.
Yes. So he's been in that situation. But no, it was great from every standpoint being with him. One year we began the season in Feldkirch. We had training camp in Feldkirch, Austria. It was Vinny Lecavalier's first training camp, 1998. We were just talking about that the other night. Jason Cullen, our defenseman for 7 years, and I were on a radio show talking about it. And we just had training camp there. It was part of something, an initiative that the NHL would develop and build later on in many ways in Europe. But we ended up playing the Sabres in a preseason game in Innsbruck, Austria at the end of that camp. We were there for about a week. And John Cullen at the time was a pretty good centerman for us. And he got lymphoma and missed time, battled through it, recovered, and came back to play in that training camp and in that preseason game that we televised. That was his first game back. So a lot of memorable stuff happened with Phil, and a lot of fun, exciting stuff happened with Phil involved. And of course, he to this day is still involved with the team.
What was it like when he decided to go to make the Thunderdome a reality?
Well, I got there the last year of the Thunderdome. I can tell you from a visiting broadcast standpoint, that first year they were at Expo Hall on the Florida State Fairgrounds, and I was just in there for my son's high school graduation last year, and I'm looking around and saying, how the heck did they play hockey there? And yeah, that would have been our booth over there, and really? But it was quite a setup. And Phil's story is that when the NHL came to inspect the building, he had moved some seats out.
Yes.
And so the rink size looked bigger than it was really. When they approved it, said, okay, great, move the seats back in, now it's a little bandbox. And just crazy things would happen in there. I just remember coming in there with Gerry Cheevers with Hartford, and he and Wayne Cashman were good buddies from the old Bruin days, and Cash was one of the assistant coaches. We pull up, and here's Cash. He's got all sorts of paper spread out the hood of a truck. He's outside the building because there's no room for a coach's office. You got players fishing in the pond next door before the game. Just crazy stuff. So for the next 3 years after that, they move into what they call the Thunderdome. It was the Suncoast Dome, obviously Tropicana Field now. It was built in 1988, anticipating getting either the Giants or the White Sox or somebody. Nobody moved, and they were stuck with this place. But somehow they made it work as a hockey arena and really developed some concepts that to this day, outdoor play areas for kids and so forth. They came up with that stuff. It was called Fanland. Steve Donner, a longtime friend of mine from the Amerks, and Jerry Helper came up with a lot of these ideas. Little
miniature golf. I remember
miniature golf, a booth you could throw a football, measure how fast you could throw a baseball, all sorts of little games that fans could occupy themselves with before the game. So it was stuff that you see now to this day. When Wayne Gretzky would come in there, first thing he'd do would go out to Fanland. He wanted to mess around out there, and play those games, and obviously his teammates were into that too. So it was a very unique experience calling hockey in a baseball stadium.
Now, you said you worked with Gerry Cheevers. What was that like to work with a guy of that caliber?
Just unbelievable. It was just a rollicking 9 years together because no one can tell a story like Jerry, and he was in the middle of all these great stories with that Gas House Gang Bruins team that they had with Phil and Bobby Orr.
Oh God, just the stories are hysterical.
Oh, it's great characters. And so Jerry, would be a great storyteller, and he'd also be extremely funny on the air. And sometimes he'd catch you, and we were doing a game for Sports Channel America once. It was a playoff game, Washington and Pittsburgh, and Brian Trottier was playing for the Penguins. This was the first year they won the Stanley Cup in 1991. And Jerry says, well, Brian Trottier was a big star in that superstar competition, that show they used to have. The weightlifting, he was great. He was in the weightlifting. He says, I was great in an event like that. I said, really? What was that? He said, weight gaining. So he'd have these little one-liners and shoot them out during the telecast, and we just had so much fun, and just the contacts that Jerry had around the country, whether it was hockey related or horse racing related or anything like that. I just owe him so much for the experience of 9 years working.
Now, you've been on the Tampa Bay Lightning broadcast team for a long time, since '95. What's it like working with Chief? I mean, you've worked with goalies. That seems to be a way or a pathway. You seem to always wind up with the goalies. I mean, what's that like to work with Chief now?
And somehow, Chris, at least I think I've retained my sanity. I don't know how, but working with these goalies. But Chief, it's 19 years together, give or take a lockout, and we've had a wonderful time. And he's so great. I learned so much from listening to him. I don't know if there's anyone better in the industry at diagramming plays in a telestrator. He can pick out stuff. You're calling a game, and okay, there's a scramble, and something happens near the net or something like that, and he can go back in the minutest detail, break that down, slow it down, and really point things out. A great teaching tool, and he's the best. Like Marv Albert calls
the Czar of the telestrator.
The Czar of the telestrator.
Mike Fratello.
That's right. Chief is hockey's version of that, no question about it. But we've had so much fun, whether it's been off the ice, golf, traveling, and road trips and so forth. On the air, just great moments and a lot of fun.
Now, they win the Cup in 2004. You've won a Calder Cup as an announcer, but you didn't call the game in 2004. But it must have been to come full circle to see the team struggle when you were there, and now they're on top of the world with John Tortorella. I mean, it has to be another great moment for you.
Absolutely. It was very disappointing, the fact that by the rules, the networks take over at that time in the second round, in the third round. Now it's the second round. But we called the series against the Islanders in the first round, the Canadiens in the second round, and then ABC and ESPN took over from there. Gary Thorne, Bill Clement, John Davidson, I think, were the guys who took it from there. So our coverage from there was pre and post game. We weren't even allowed in the building per
NHL rules.
Yeah. Which were to protect the rights of the national rights holder, being ABC. So we'd be out on the plaza outside the arena. We we'd be on the road. We'd travel with them to Philadelphia for the Eastern Conference Finals. We were tucked away in a little dressing room. It was next to the Flyer Dancers or something like that, so that kept Chief busy.
The Ice Girls.
That's right. And Calgary, we were in a tent outside the Saddle Dome. We had fans trying to crawl into our tent. Marty St. Louis scores the winning goal in Game 6 of the finals in double overtime. And we've got a monitor, and you've seen these working so long in the TV business, Chris. It was a 9-inch monitor. 9 inches. We couldn't even tell who the player
Folks,
was.
that's not very large.
It's like looking at your phone almost. And we're trying to recreate and recap the action from something like that. It was a unique experience, but certainly not to what you would prefer.
What do you think that did for the hockey community in Tampa?
Oh, it's another thing where, Phil had gotten things started there way back when in 1992, in those first years. Nigel Kerwin, who's now the video coach with the team, he's the only employee who's been with that team since the start, continuously. And he was part of it too, in really taking the game literally to the streets. And players mixed with fans on a regular basis in those early years. And I think that really kind of generated grassroots support for the team in there. And now you've got the ups and downs with ownership. Cavalier had his ups and downs in his early years. John Tortorella comes on. Ran the Fidelity Magellan Fund in the 90s, and so he's a finance guy, not a real outgoing personality, but he's gotten used to that. But the thing that he really impressed upon people was how we were part of a community as employees of the team. And so he set up a couple of initiatives. One that I think really surprised people is he took the Lightning Foundation and expanded it, and they would go out and solicit submissions of local community heroes. And just some amazing stories have come forth, and so many of them that for every home game, he gives $50,000 to the charity of this person's choice, whoever is selected as the community hero. And this is our 3rd year doing it.
It's got to be remarkable.
Absolutely. It's just incredible, the generosity of the man. And he's gotten all the employees in. We are expected to put in a number of hours of community service, whether it's helping out at homeless cafeterias or for the holidays, in terms of preparing meals for Thanksgiving and Christmas for people, and helping out in so many different ways. And it was a great time. Everybody's enjoyed it, and we get to work together. I work with people that I would never see in engineering in the building or sales or something like that, and you work side by side, and you really feel closer knit and really making a difference in the community. That's all Mr. Vinny.
We'll wrap it up after this, the Power Play break with Rick Peckham.